Hi, welcome everyone. Welcome to Glenda's Dragon's Den. My name is Glenda and this is LD.
Hello.
And we are on Conscious Awakening Network. We are so glad that you're here today with us. I do want to say that our original scheduled guest, Catherine Cirillos, had a health issue. And once she is well enough, we are going to reschedule her. So let's all send a lot of good healing energy for her because we definitely want to hear what she has to say. And for today, we have a phenomenal guest, one of my closest friends. So she's a sister. And well,
She's a nun?
We're just going to.
She's not a novice.
Not a novice.
She's not a novice.
She's one of my spiritual sisters.
Oh.
Okay. There you go. Soul sisters. Anyway, the phenomenal, great, and very gifted and talented Sheila Seppi. Hi, everyone.
Hey.
How are you? How are you?
I am awesome. I just got home from work. Everybody, this is Willow. If you can see him, he'll be joining us too.
He loves to be on camera, that's for sure.
Yes.
So how are you today?
I'm awesome. Yeah. Excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, thank you for agreeing. It's, especially since it was short notice. So I'm glad that our schedules met perfectly. So,
yes.
Sorry you didn't have time to eat. Your stomach is growling.
Yeah, I wish that was my stomach.
Oh, Lord. So you have a very intensive bio. And I'm just going to let you tell everybody about yourself and how you got to where you are now.
This way they only hear what you want them to know.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks again so much for having me, Glenda. I appreciate it so much. And LD, and I apologize for Willow. He's just feeling good and excited to be alive. Yes. Willow is my sidekick. He goes everywhere with me. He had some health issues, which led to him being extremely spoiled. Now that he is healthy, he still likes to lay on the desk with me. But I know what it's like to feel really good after feeling really bad, because that's really where my journey began. Back in my early 20s and 30s, I had been diagnosed with a whole host of diseases, including brain tumors, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. At one point, they had diagnosed me with bone cancer. I had a whole host of just various autoimmune diseases, including sarcoidosis and erythema nodosum, which led me to walk with a cane. And when that began, I thought, oh, okay, well, they also told me that I had the beginning stages of MS and that I would be in a wheelchair by the time I was 40. I had recently, at that time, this is back in 1999, I had recently developed the beginning phases of RA. And so I was on Celebrex every day just to be able, to open and close my hands. Needless to say, I was a very, very sick person. On top of it, I had a very corporate America background. I had 3 kids. I had a husband. We had a dysfunctional relationship. It was very toxic. And no doubt that helped to contribute to part of my illnesses. But what happened to me was on the evening of September 22nd, I went to bed a very, very sick person. And what seemed to be 7 o'clock the next morning changed my life. And it felt as if someone reached down, grabbed me by the hair of my head, pulled me bolt right up in bed, and it was like lightning. ran through my body. And then I found myself in white space. And I don't know how long I was in this white space, but I know that I felt amazing. I had no pain, no discomfort. I felt all of this unconditional love, all of this healing. I mean, I loved where I was. I didn't see anyone there, but I just sensed all of this love. Whether I was in it or it was being sent to me didn't matter to me. It was a phenomenal place to be. But the next thing I knew, my peripheral vision started coming back in, and then my frontal vision. And when that happened, I discovered I was sitting up in bed. And as I started looking around the room, everything was the same, but everything was different. When I got down, the first thing I noticed when I got out of the bed was when my feet hit the ground, and I hit the carpet, it was kind of like, ooh, gushy, I like this, you know. And then as I walked towards the bathroom and I caught my reflection in the mirror, I just stopped and stared at myself, because it was like I was looking out of somebody else's eyes at myself, and all the time knowing it was me, but not recognizing me, if that makes any sense. And then as the next couple minutes started occurring, I started having all of these past life memories flooding me. And the important thing to realize here is when I went to bed the night before, I didn't even believe in past lives. And here I was experiencing them. Also, I started receiving all of this information about universal structure, and like how, you know, the individuation of source and the various layers and all of the vibrational frequencies and how our oversouls are created. I didn't even know what an oversoul was at the time. So all of this information is coming in. And then I started remembering healing modalities that I'd never even studied. So with a background in psychology, I thought I was having a psychotic break. I thought, you know what? Between the dysfunctional marriage, being a mom, having all of this high profile job, everything, and the illnesses, I've just lost it. And I was okay with that. I fully accepted that. But thank goodness that was not the case. But within 3 months, I had left this marriage. Now, during this 3 months, everything about me changed, from the way I dressed to the way I spoke, to the articulation level that I had, to my preferences in clothes, you name it. Everything about me changed and shifted. So there again, I was like, there is something just not right with me, but I'm just going with it because there's nothing else I can. What I didn't realize at that moment is when that sensation of lightning running through my body occurred, that's when a walk in soul entered into the body. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. And the other thing that occurred, I was instantaneously healed. So when I went back to my doctors, they found they found nothing related to any of the diseases. None of the symptoms that I had were appearing. Everything had totally gone away. I threw the Celebrex and everything else out the window. And for the first time in a long time, I had this mental clarity beginning to come back in. Now, with this mental clarity, one of the reasons that I thought that I was having a psychotic break is I was having voices to tell me things. I was seeing people walking around that were not there. And little did I know that I had become instantaneously clairvoyant and clairaudient, clairsentient, the whole 9 yards. And it was so overpowering at the time because I'd never experienced anything like that. So you can imagine, with all of this going on, why I would, feel the way that I did. But within 3 months, I had left that marriage. And within another 3 months, I accepted a new position in another state and met my first spiritual teacher, because while I was there kind of checking things out, I picked up a telephone directory. Now, yes, 23 years ago, we didn't Google. So I picked up a telephone directory and I'm looking through it. And all of a sudden, it was as if there was nothing else on the page but this ad: spiritual counseling. I'm like, woohoo, that's got my name all over it, because spirituality resonated because at the time I was super, super religious, but I was not spiritual. But it still resonated with me. And the counseling, of course, because of the background, the lady had her PhD in psychology. And I called and I said, I think I'm having a psychotic break. I need to see you. And so obviously she was after hours and she
Right.
called the next day. And then I got in the following day. And when I went in to talk with her, she told me later that when I walked in the door, all she could see was light, that she
Mm.
couldn't even see a person. It was just light. And when I sat down and started talking, she said, the light then slowly started retracting and, her vision came back into clarity. And as I was telling her my story, she goes, I've been practicing a psychologist for 30 years, and there's absolutely nothing that you're telling me that would lead me to believe that you're having a psychotic break. She goes, I want you to just understand that and just breathe. And that's where she kept telling me, just breathe. Because I'm like, yeah. And then I was walking down the hallway, and then I saw this, and then all of this stuff. And she's like, calm down, just breathe. And so by the end of that session, I had decided we made another appointment for me to come back. But I was really angry when I left because I thought when I got there and she heard my story, she was going to write me a prescription for this little blue pill that I could take. And all of a sudden, my dysfunctional reality would come back because I didn't know how to handle life. Now we're 6 months into me being a walk in.
Right.
So, the next session that we had, she said, did you do the breathing exercises? Did you practice the meditation? Da, da, da. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And she said, I just want you to know that you, in my opinion, are what's called a walk-in. And I couldn't understand it. I could not wrap my brain around it. I'm like, what do you mean one soul leaves and another soul comes in? Then I would be dead. Oh, we're kind of talking reincarnation here. So I had to sit with that for just a
Mhm.
little bit. And then she also invited me to join a group of women that she taught because her background was actually not just in psychology, but she was of Hopi lineage. And her background growing up with her grandmother was all the indigenous teachings. And at the time, Chief Dan Iwahima was still alive, and he had asked her to take the teachings of the people forward because the Hopi people, at that time, I think there was only like 5,000, Hopis that were still there on the reservation. And so she invited me to these circles, and it was there that I learned how to connect with my spirit guides. I
Mhm.
learned how to, travel into the upper world and into the lower world. It's there that I began all my shamanic practices. And it was those practices that, in fact, actually helped to anchor me into this third dimensional reality. Because when I would travel, especially I love the underworld, when I would travel, into the underworld, then I would meet my guides and they would sit and it would feel like days. And I would come out of that experience and it would be like 30 minutes had passed. But they would give me these profound teachings and help me to understand who I was. Well, as time went on, let's see, I was a walk-in, then I divorced. 4 years had passed, and now I was still studying with my teacher all of this time. But it became very clear to me that I was having a hard time functioning in corporate America. So I was studying all types of practices. I studied Reiki, became a Reiki master. I started studying all kinds of aromatherapies and this and that, you name it. While I was still doing my full time job, I actually worked in I'm just going to say a pork project, if you will, through a congressman's office. And so that was like an 80-hour-a-week job, plus,
Mhm.
my spiritual practices, but they really kept me grounded. So I had gone to a meeting, and it was there that I met what was going to be my husband. Now, my spiritual teacher had already told me who he was this man that was coming into my life because I was having experiences. He was showing up spiritually in the house, blah, 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 the whole 9 yards. So we met at a meeting 6 weeks later. He came to visit me because I was living in Kentucky at the time. He came to visit me 6 weeks later, and then less than a year later, we were married. But because I had a good job, the kids were in school there, we decided that I would stay in Kentucky. And he had quit his job and actually moved to Kentucky, but his mother had started a campground, like 40 years previously. And she's like, oh my God, I'm going to have to sell it. So we were talking about it. It's like, you run the campground in the summer. When the kids are out of school, we can come out there. We'll hang out in Colorado in the summer, and then we'll come back in the fall, and then he'll close the campground, be back in the fall. And we did that for a couple of years. But once I moved lock, stock, and barrel to Colorado, that's when my journey really began to unfold, because by this time, I had been in the body like 5-6 years, and I had anchored fully, and more information was coming in. Things I could not understand. And so obviously I want to take that to my guides and talk with them. I started my own healing business called Spirit Way Wellness. And I was seeing clients, on a sporadic basis, because it's a new business getting started. So during that time, I had the opportunity to really spend a lot of time with my guides. And one of the questions I asked them, I'm like, okay, am I a body snatcher? Just tell me. I can take it. Just give it to me straight. And they're like, no, you're not a body snatcher. This is how it works. And they began to explain to me about pre-birth planning. They began to explain to me that when I came in, I actually entered in not from a place of waiting to come in to this life, to the waiting place, it's got the big long lines coming down to earth, but that I had actually come in from a collective. And what had happened is I was in a collective, so that would put me probably like at a, I don't know, 7th, 8th density, because I was not just with all of my multidimensional aspects, but my consciousness had merged with other consciousnesses. And we were in the Andromedan system. That's a big, huge story in and of itself, but we were doing some work in the Andromedan system when we felt, sense there was this vibrational call that came out from Gaia. And we came to Gaia to assist. And Gaia was seeking volunteers to help with the awakening energy, to help with the ascension process. Now, okay, so I'm 7th, 8th. Gaia has to be 9th, 10th density, because she had merged to the point that she could actually place her consciousness into a planet. When you are at that density level, you can go into stars, you can go into planets, etc. So she had come to Earth, and she was in yet another process of ascension for herself, which she needed volunteers, because look, this energy on Earth is holding me down. I can't ascend with all this chaotic craziness that's going on this planet. I need help. We need to get these people awake. We need to, make them aware of what's going on. And so yet again, our consciousness merged with, I can't even begin to tell you how many consciousnesses. And we were working in the structure of the crystalline grid of this planet, beaming energy into the planet in the form of light codes, unconditional love, awakening, energies, all of these types of things to help get people ready. Because as Gaia ascends, humanity, there's 2 different types of ascension. One is with the consciousness, which humanity is already experiencing. And so many people are 5th, 6th, 7th dimensional consciousness. But when you're looking at a density level, which is totally different, you can still be in 5D, but yet be in a 3rd density level. When you're in these density levels, one of the things that happens is you have to kind of, the energy that you're enshrouded with, which was humanity, has to also be vibrating at a certain frequency. And so as humanity's consciousness begins to rise, then they become more in resonance with Gaia, making Gaia's consciousness yet rising. And so, in my personal opinion, from my experience, that's why we were here to help with that. But when the soul of this body cried out to be released, it was decided by the collective that I would be the aspect to come in. And the reason for that is with my multidimensionality, part of that was of the Arcturian lineage. And so the soul previous was Arcturian. And so even though the body was very, very dysfunctional, it had an energetic framework which allowed me to be able to make a transition into the body without blowing the biology up, because you have to meld the neurology. You have to replace chakras, you have to upgrade, you have to move meridians, you have to do all of these things, which the guides, the Arcturians, were working on for this transition to occur. And then once I entered into the body, of course, just like with everybody, well, not everybody, but most everybody, then we had that veil of forgetfulness that happened. So anyway, once I got into human form and my guide started explaining all of this to me, I felt more at ease. And then it made me feel more at ease that the soul of this body actually had requested to transition earlier so that they could have a resting place. Because I'm telling you, this was a dysfunctional, toxic marriage and situation that this body was in, body mind complex, actually. So anyway, once I moved to Colorado and started working with my guides, every time I would think I'm doing, how you like, okay, whew, I'm finally doing it. I'm right where I need to be.
Yeah.
They would start challenging me, go big. Well, the first thing they told me is people cannot drop into the fullness of their spirit when they're in pain. I was like, oh. So then that was pretty profound. And I started studying a whole plethora of healing modalities, started practicing them, very successful. Business is growing like crazy. I ended up having 3 offices, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm working on a client one day and I'm just in there, just getting it. And I hear right behind me, go bigger. I about jumped out of my skin. And the client's like, what? And I'm like, I thought I saw a mouse. I didn't know what to say. So anyway, I kept thinking, go bigger, go bigger. What are they talking about? Oh, I need to have more people in here. So, I had studied so much. I was at the point of like my brain was saturated with modalities and things. And so then I started inviting people to come into the office, and I kept hearing go bigger. And then it's like, okay, what else? Well, I'm doing teachings. Maybe I need, I'll invite other people to come in and be speakers. So I did that. Then I kept hearing go bigger. And then I started planning these huge events to have people to come on our land. And it was during that time that I had this really funky illness that just hit me and took me down. And I was talking to Barbara Lamb about it because she and I had formed a friendship. And she's like, have you ever considered that maybe spirit's trying to get your attention to, number one, slow down? Because I still was just finally getting it that I didn't have to be the one to do all the go bigger.
Right.
So, first off, to slow down, but second of all, to write your book. And I was like, oh, yeah. So while I am healing, I'm just thinking about how would I go about writing a book? Because this was in April. And it was just January of that same year that I had made my first presentation about being a walk in. Now, I had absolutely no idea how I was going to make this presentation because they said, oh, bring a PowerPoint. How do you put that onto a PowerPoint? But my husband helped me and I got a PowerPoint together. So I actually used that PowerPoint kind of as my keys, as my thought processes to start writing this book. And by the time the event on the land happened, I had the first draft, at least of my story of everything that had happened, because you're just hearing the tip of the iceberg. I mean, ay. So anyway, Andrea Piran was one of the speakers, and she was staying here at the house. You know Andrea.
Yes.
And so I said, Andrea, can you read this and give me I want your honest, brutal, honest opinion. And she read this. Oh my God. Oh my God. You've got to turn this into a book. And I'm like, well, I was kind of hoping, but I don't know where to start. And she talked to me and was telling me some things. And I took all of that into consideration, and I started down a particular path. And then I got like this homesickness inside of me, like, I want to talk to other walk-ins. I want to know their stories. I'm not the only one, because at that time I really felt like I had been dumped here,
Right.
and just left to fend for myself, because I didn't have a community. There was zero support system. And even when I moved to Colorado, there was no community. I had to build that. And so I started talking to people, and they pointed me in the directions. Oh, so and so's a walk in. So and so's a walk in. I'm like, oh my God, this is phenomenal. So I get a hold of them. I start interviewing them. And all of a sudden, I start discovering everybody's experience was nothing like mine. There were threads of commonality, but we all had a very different way of how we got here. And then I began to discover that not everyone is a soul exchange walk in, which I'm a pure soul exchange walk in. The other soul totally left, a new soul came in, plain and simple. But
Mm-hmm.
there's what's called a soul infusion. And I have to back up really quickly, because my guides, I had never even heard the term oversoul until after I had written my book. And that is the honest truth. The things that they had been showing me, I had no idea what it was that they were even talking about, because I was still growing into the knowledge. And so they taught me about, and there's a whole huge teaching with oversouls, but when a body gets ready, or a soul gets ready to incarnate, part of what comes in with it is what's called the Shantias Khan. And that's kind of like your own little personal cloud storage, and you're uploading and downloading data all of the time, depending on what you need for this particular lifetime. What skills do you need? What knowledge do you need from other lives, et cetera, et cetera. And then as we incarnate from that, we have the higher self, which is attached to the Shantias Khan, which of course the Shantias Khan is attached to the oversoul. And the oversoul can be having many, many, many experiences and have many, many Shantias Khans. But so when that oversoul attaches to the physical form, it becomes the soul. And that is the personality of this lifetime. But then the kicker was, they said all of these energetic bodies out here is what's called your spirit, because that's what enlivens. If you weren't receiving the information here, there would be nothing going on here at all. And so, despite the soul being being connected, and so once they told me that, it really began to shift things. And I began to fully understand that, yes, we are souls having this human experience. And when they told me about these soul infusions, they said the soul of the body, and one person had only 13% of their original soul that stayed. That energy traveled up even through the Shantias Khan, in through that energetic conduit, up into the oversoul, and pulls more of their oversoul energy down into the body. And then when I was talking with some other people, they were talking about how they had their original soul had stayed, another soul had come in, it had served as a battery charger and then left. Other people told me another soul came in and they actually became one soul. Another
Mm-hmm.
person told me a soul came in, their soul left, did what it needed, it came back, the oversoul left. And so then, or not the oversoul, but the the layer, it's kind of fits like a neoprene suit. And
Right.
so from that, then they told me about the braided souls, where you actually have two souls. So you have the infusion, the overlays, and then you have the braided soul. Then I talked to people who had walk ins that had come in on a temporary basis and then left. And I didn't find anyone that had more than a month with a particular soul. And so I started calling those jumpers because they would jump in and jump out. Some people that I've talked to said, oh, yeah, they pop in. I'm like, oh, I should have called them poppers. Yeah. When these jumpers come in, even
Right.
though it's on a short-term basis, they infuse the body with so much information and downloads that when they leave, the person actually feels like part of themselves have left. Okay. And then there's what's called the multidimensional, the multi-layered souls.
Mhm.
And that's when you have a soul that has multiple overlays on top of it that may be from their angelic, their Palladian, their Arcturian, their Lyran, their whatever, and they all are activated and aware of each other. And so I interviewed so many people, but I selected 15 people that I put in the book along with my story. And then I interviewed like 8 other individuals in the field of science and consciousness. So I put all that information together in a book called Walk-Ins Cosmology of the Soul. After the book was printed, all of the walk-ins felt the same way that I did. And we all kind of wanted to stay in contact with each other because we'd never had our own little community before. And so we decided that we were going to do a conference. And I had been interviewed by Phil Gruber on one of his shows, and Alan Steinfeld was there, and he heard my story, and he's like, "You want to do a walk-in conference? Oh my God, I know the guy for you." So he introduced me to Neil Gar with Portal to Ascension, and Neil said, "Oh yeah, you can use this platform, and we'll do the first ever walk-in conference and yada yada." So we did. And I was so super excited. But after that conference, I started being inundated by people, contacting me and getting a hold of me. And at first it was great because then I could send everybody their little personal email, but it got to where it was overwhelming. And then I was in bed asleep one night, and about 5 o'clock in the morning, as my guides just love to do, they, kind of do that little tap on the shoulder, and
Yeah.
they let me know, they said, "You're going to start a Starseed Academy." Well, first off, I think there already is a Starseed Academy. Can you elaborate just a little bit? So, anyway, from that, Phil had worked with me, and together we had come up with the name of Wish Alliance: Walk-ins, Indigos, Starseeds, and Hybrids. And that organization was in place for just a little bit over a year when my guides, I got that little tap on the shoulder again, go bigger. What do you want now? I'm doing all this stuff. We've got Zoom meetings on Mondays, on Thursdays. I'm working. What do you want? And they showed me the Conscious Awakening Network, and where I was supposed to get people together who had phenomenal information to share, who had soulful stories to share, who had spiritual information and knowledge to share, to get out to the general population. And so now we have the Conscious Awakening Network, and we are on Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV. We're on iOS, which is your Apple and Google phones, and also on the Android phones. So you can download all those apps free. Of course, you have to be a paid subscriber to Roku to get, to get our app. But then also, we are on every major podcasting platform out there. And so we're really trying to get this information out. And once we got the podcasting, I'm like, okay, are we good? Are we good now? Can I just kind of like, whew, you take a break? Because I was in the middle of writing a trilogy
Right.
when they gave me this idea. And of course, I had interviewed you for
Mhm.
one of the individuals to share their story in that. And that was another go bigger. And they're like, you got to do this and da 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 da. And they said, you got to get it out by June. Well, this was like March. So I thought it was June of that year, but I think they're talking about June of next year. Thank God. I was working day and night trying to get that book done. And it was like, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. I need some help. I need some help. And they're like, go bigger. And Conscious Awakening Network came through. So that is kind of my story, where I am, and what's happened to me in my life. And, I work with people every day, all day long. I do soul readings, I do this, I do that with people. But one of the things that I have found, that because of all this energy that's recently washed across the planet from like the 8th to the 11th,
Mhm.
that was really waking up and energizing and bringing to the surface a lot of yuck, black, gooey stuff that was actually stuck in our cellular memories. And so all of that had imprinted onto our cellular structures. And when I say black yuck, that's a lot of pain, that's a lot of soul wounding that started to come up for healing. And so I think one of the reasons that we're seeing all the chaos around us as we are is it's kind of like the dark's last firm grip on what's happening, because there's so much more light that's coming in on the
Mhm.
planet right now. And of course, the more light we have, the more chaos we're going to be able to see and identify. And the more people are going to say, this is not acceptable, not in my life.
Exactly.
Point of information.
Yes.
So the old soul had a religious background.
Hmm.
Have you retained any of that memory?
Well, let me just tell you. Um, when I came in, one of the things that happened is I lost a lot of the original soul's memory, even though it had been imprinted onto the cellular structure. When the new energy came in, it kind of blew a lot of that out, and I still don't have all of my memories. I'm getting a lot more, but and I keep asking for them all the time, and I've gotten some that's like, ooh, okay, I wish I hadn't have gotten that one, but that stuff, that contracts that I agreed that I was going to come here to help clear in order to be able to be here at this particular time, because my collective really wanted boots on the ground. And so anyway, with the religion, no, I don't think the same way that I did. My
I'm not
religion
asking you
had,
philosophy wise.
no,
What my concern is that you use the buzzword of the underworld.
uh-huh,
And the underworld to you, I'm
is
sure.
something different.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Okay, let me
I'd
clarify.
like a little clarification for the people in the room that may not have your conception of the
Yes.
underworld, what you mean when
Yes.
you say the underworld.
Yes. Okay, two things. First off, when with my religious belief, I had God in a box, and that was all blown open. And God was like a billion infinite more powerful, more awesome than I could have ever conceived before. And when I talk about the underworld, when you do shamanic travel, the it's everything is in a circle. The natives talk about everything occurs in a circle. There's this upper world, there's this middle world that we live in, and there's this underworld. And then you come back up, which also creates the infinity symbol. And so, from the Native American philosophy, that which is on top is considered the upper world. But if you travel deep enough into the upper world, guess what? You end up in the lower world. And if you travel deep enough into the lower world, you end up into the upper world. It's all connected, it's all consciousness, and it's just various layers. So, with the upper world, this is more of your non incarnated beings. This could be the angelic beings, high spiritual teachers, Buddhics, if you will. The lower world is consisting more of like disincarnate souls, not that are trapped in the etheric layers of the earth or even within the astral realm, but it's more of disincarnate souls that are just kind of chilling out, waiting until they incarnate again, learning new lessons, sitting like I did, working with my guides to understand everything they were trying to get through my thick skull.
So you're not talking about Hades.
Oh no, no, no,
And
no, no.
that's what I want to make
Underworld has,
clear.
yes, only is related in shamanism with Native American teachings.
And you understand, I hope, why I wanted to
Absolutely.
make that distinction, because not
Yes.
everyone who is tuning in is conscious of what that means. And
Yes.
And I forget sometimes
Yeah.
to
Thanks for that.
clarify
Yeah.
that, because I'm listening to you. I'm like, oh yeah, the underwear. Okay, she went to the underwear. She did it. And I'm like, and then he that's why he catches all these things,
that's
because
why she has me here.
yeah.
Great
I'm
job.
I'm that anchor that keeps her,
There you go. There you go.
But in those times, in the times that you walked in and you decided to basically come out of the closet,
Yes.
in a way, that took a lot of courage.
Yeah.
Even if your guys were waking you up at 5. By the way, you're lucky. You're spoiled. 5 o'clock. I get up between 2 and 4.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't get the luxury
well,
of
you're shorter.
I don't get the luxury of waking up at 5. I kind of wish, but so that's why I'm like, huh. So it takes a lot
Oh yeah.
of courage and understanding that you may not be accepted, because I know when I said, okay, I'm a medium and all that other stuff, my close friends, yeah, oh yeah, they knew it since day one. My family knew it since day one. But when you actually come out and say, hey, I'm here, you want to talk, there are there's some people that are looking at you strange as
We don't talk about this at the diner.
yeah.
Let's put it that way, okay?
Well, I think I was very blessed because I came into a very tenacious body. Okay.
Mhm.
So there was already that working for me. But also, when I came in, a lot of, I mean, I have no baggage. Personally, I have no baggage. There are things that come up that are related to the contract that the soul had previously, that was an imprint within the
Right.
cellular structure, that as it comes up for healing, I'm like, where did that come from? You know, but I'm very blessed because I know that we are all eternal beings. We are souls. This is just a temporary experience. When the worst of the worst things happen, I'm just like, take a breath. It's just a human experience. It's just a human experience. It's just a human experience. This will be over in a flash. I'll be back on the other side. I'll be doing my thing. This will all be over. It does not matter. And I try not to put a lot of emphasis on what's happening in this 3D reality. And I have that ability to operate from that place of soul. And when I came in with an immediate understanding. There is really no right and wrong. It's all experience, period. It's all experience. And when you're on the other side, it's the experience. Did you walk that experience the way that you wanted to? Did
Right.
you have the type of experience that you want? It's all about experience. I mean, there's a lot to it, but there's no right or wrong. So the shame, the blame, the guilt, everything just is. And that's one thing I try to always share with my people is, it just is. You have to just breathe through it, understand, rise above the chaos and see it for what it is. Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing that came in is, quite frankly, if they had thrown eggs at me, I would have just ducked and got out of the way and just kept going. Because when I came in, I have a very firm mission that I have to accomplish. And it is to be a way shower. It is to help wake people up. It is to let them know about this Gaia consciousness and how we are very symbiotic in our relationship with her, and about these transitions that we're making and helping to prepare people for the ascension. So whatever it takes to do, that's what I do. And I really, I mean, that's it. I live and breathe my mission every single
Mhm.
day. And I'm just as human as the next person, but I know who I am. I know what my mission is, and I know why I'm here. And I know that all of this will soon be shifting and changing. Even if we live to 90, 100, even if we're here for 300 years, forever is a long time, folks.
Yeah, it is. It sure
I
is.
always used to tell my clients that this life is but a drop in the ocean of eternity.
Absolutely.
And they have to put the traumas and everything else, when they can, into that perspective.
Right.
So
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
definitely. And so what would you recommend for someone who's just coming into the knowledge that they are awoken? Because for me, I still have a lot of pieces that I'm missing from my
Hmm.
childhood. I remember a lot,
Hmm.
but there's some stuff that is still like people show me pictures. I'm like, I don't remember that,
Right.
and stuff like that. So, what would be one of your thoughts on that? Like,
And here's the challenge I have with this. My background is that I've been on the board of directors of a regional mental health association in the state.
Hmm.
And then I was vice chair of resource development for the coordinating body called Mahaney's, which was the New York State body that worked with the legislature,
Hmm.
crafting mental health consumer
Right.
advocacy programs and such. And so, what she just described, there is a psychological category
Component.
of, and it has nothing to do with spirituality.
right.
Right. Right. That's exactly right. And my background also was in mental health technology. And
Right. And that's
so
why I'm asking you to
mhm,
help bridge
yeah.
that gap
And so
because that
that's
was
why,
what I did.
yeah. So immediately I thought I was having a psychotic break because that's where my background, that's where my mental knowledge took me. It's like, you're having a disassociative episode, you are paranoid, you're having a psychotic break. I mean, I came with a list of things to this PhD and I said, okay, here's what's happening to me. And, we talked about them and she's like, but you're not exhibiting any symptoms, so immediately she knew. But, for me to even be able to come to terms that such a thing could happen, if someone had told me 25 years ago that this is where I would be today, I would have laughed them out of the room because my thought processes would not allow for that. Because you have a soul, you incarnate, you die, you go to heaven, you go to hell, that's it. That's what I was taught.
Hmm.
But I came in with knowledge of more. And I know beyond knowing, beyond knowing, beyond knowing that what I know is true. It
Well,
is
you've
not a
experienced.
psychotic break. I have experienced, lived it, and continue to experience it on a regular basis. And so, with psychotic, we used to have a joke, and probably wasn't a very good joke, but we would always say, the difference between neurosis and psychosis is people who are neurotic, they build castles in the sky. People who are psychotic live in them. So, the proof is in the pudding because my behavior, my story, my experience has never faltered ever. It never changes. More information will come in, but everything is exactly the same. I'm probably the most grounded woo woo person that you'll ever meet. And people would never, that come into the office that don't know me, on a personal level, they would never even guess this, that this is my life, unless they see the book up front. What is this walk-in cosmology of the soul thing about? And I'm like, well, let me just tell you, and that I take as the opening, because when my guides told me years ago, people cannot drop into the depths of who they truly are when they're in pain, I took that seriously because part of my mission is to help people to wake up. And so I have a very niche population that first will either come into me unknowing why they're even coming. They think they need to have their back put back in, or their hips out of place, or their ankles need to be rebuilt, or whatever. They'll say, oh, that's why they're there. But as we're talking, as we begin to release those patterns that have been held in the body, there's always an opening where we can start talking. And there is not a person that has ever, and I have seen thousands of people that has ever come to work with me that we don't eventually start talking to them about their soul, because that's what I'm here to talk about.
Well, my quote that I use with trolls that challenge what I post in
Uh-huh.
various social medias is that your belief system is in direct conflict with my experience.
Yeah.
And what do you say to that? Because that's all faith is a belief system. But when you've experienced it,
Right. When I get when I get trolls, you know what I do? Delete, block. It's like I don't have time for that.
yeah, but I try to give them the opportunity. I
Yeah.
try to create that
Yeah. That
place
nurturing environment.
if they want to make that transition. And then,
Yes.
if they begin to get disrespectful, I always have that to fall back on. But,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, I find that very useful because it really puts it into perspective for the people on the periphery that are watching it happen. Is, oh
Yes.
yeah, that's a belief system, and he's experienced it. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, and I tell people, you don't have to believe this, but this is my experience, and that's all I can talk about. What my guides tell me, what I do, how I operate, and what I know to be true for me. And everybody, people will come to me and they'll say, "Well, gosh, I just had a reading from so and so, and they told me something similar, but," and I'm like, "But you got to wait a minute." Because you can go to 10 different readers and you can get 10 different stories, and they are all 100% accurate. It depends on where you're looking as to what you see at any given time, because we are so multifaceted. And when I first started talking and people, the reason I learned that delete block kind of thing is, I had people saying they were going to come to my house and burn crosses in my yard and I was a demon. And I was like, really? Really? Probably the first dozen I tried to be, oh, but let me explain. And then they would just get more violent. And it's like, I don't do violence. Sorry.
Yeah.
Delete, block.
Yeah, it's very interesting how people have so
Right.
much fear that they're not
Yes.
willing to listen to other people's experiences.
and it's not so much the fear; it's the ego that they feel they have the right to
Mm-hmm.
force their belief system on someone else.
Well, coming in, one of the things from above, and Glenda, you've probably seen this too. When you look in, the earth is kind of like this big spider web with all these various matrices that you can get entangled into, one of them being ego, one of them being judgment, one of them being fear. And these are all experiences. Okay. And because someone's in judgment, you know, who's to say they're right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and they're wrong? Because guess what? There is no right and wrong. It is just a perspective,
Mhm.
and it's just an experience. And so when I talk to people and they're like, well, yeah, but what about this and you this and da 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 da. And it's like, yeah, that's a really interesting perspective, because it just kind of runs off of me now, because I try my best. We all have the judgments of what we think is right and what we think is wrong, but I'm constantly reminding myself that I am a soul having a human experience, period. Everyone, you're having an experience. And even when you're in a very toxic situation, if you can look at that situation and you can ask, what is the lesson I need to learn? What
Mhm.
are they reflecting back to me? That is
Mhm.
an aspect of me, because we are all consciousness of source, period, plain and simple. And we're all those individuated expressions of source. And so if Glenda's doing something that's just driving me crazy, instead of me really, unless she's got a gun and I'm fearing for my life, I'm going to be saying, now what about that is me? What is she showing me about myself that needs to be healed? And that's how I got through my divorce. I'm going to tell you, it was a nasty battle. And just coming in from the other side, dropping into total dysfunction, you talk about shock. Well, I had it. But the only way I got through it was, instead of being angry at, I still cannot wrap my brain around this behaviors and things that I was witnessing, is to be in my gratitude. I am so grateful that you've given me the opportunity to forgive you. I am so grateful to be able to extend compassion to you. I am so grateful that you're showing me where I need to grow. And so
Mm.
instead of the shame, blame, and guilt and pointing the fingers, I turn it in on myself. What do I need to do? What is being reflected to me? And sometimes it's like, what's being reflected is you need to move out of this situation. Sometimes it's like, you need to go forward, you need to go backwards, you need to do all of these other little things. But I just had this very conversation with one of the clients that I was counseling today, and it's like, if we can begin to look at ourselves and see ourselves in everyone else, the way that we treat people, the way we're able to listen to what they have to say, will become so much more non-judgmental, number
Mhm.
one. And we will learn, what is it that these people that were calling me demons had to teach me? I'm grateful. I don't have time for it. I am going to delete it, but I'm grateful they gave me the opportunity, because that lets me know I know who I am. So I am in my gratitude to all those trolls that left all that nasty stuff. I thank them, and I sent them love, and I sent them light, and I deleted them. I
Well,
also grew from that.
It makes me want to show them that there's more to life and I could do
Right.
more. It's like you use that as fuel. I know I
Yeah.
do.
Hmm.
If somebody is, say, jealous of where I am, I'm like, there's no reason to be jealous. So I
Right.
just use that energy and I'm like, I'll show you more. You want to be jealous? Okay. But instead of doing that, why don't you try to be yourself and try to grow and try to show what real love is and what the real
Hmm.
peace is meant to be.
Right.
We're supposed to be together.
Exactly.
We're
Yeah.
supposed to be sharing. We're supposed to be one. And you're acting like we're very separated
Right.
when we're not.
the
Right.
foundation for me is that perception is projection.
Mm.
And once people begin to realize that their perception of me is fundamentally what they're projecting onto me because of their fear or their ego or whatever it is, if I can get them to that point, then I have an opportunity. If they're
Hmm.
not ready to listen to that or think about that or discuss that, then I hit the delete.
Yeah.
Because I
Beautiful. Yeah,
so you have one book out.
I do.
Okay, and where can people find that? Because I don't even know where we
Uh,
are in time because I forgot to run the time.
Yeah, we're about 2 minutes from closing here.
Yeah, so let's
Amazon. Go to Amazon. And
okay,
it's in Audible, it's in ebook format. And people can also visit like the SheilaSeppi.com website, and then all the information is there, including the information about how to contact and become part of the Galactic Alliance, how, all the information about the Conscious Awakening Network, etc.
and the title again?
Walk-ins, Cosmology of the Soul.
There you
Well,
go.
thank you so much
Yes.
Well,
for
thank
making
you.
space for us.
Yes.
And you actually pretty much created this opportunity for Glenda to have you on the show.
Right.
Oh, it's kind of
Yay!
yeah.
It's one of those things where my guys say, just say yes. Whatever it is, say yes. I'm like, say yes to what? And then she texts me,
Hey,
you want
girl, guess what?
that's what I'm like, yes. Okay. And I'm like, what am I signing up to? Oh Lord.
But it's been a pleasure, and I'm sure
Yes.
our listeners are grateful because I've done very little talking on this show, so they are eternally in your.
Well, if you want your time filled, I can talk for days.
I'm sure they enjoyed listening to you more than they would.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you very much. We love you. I want to hold on for a minute. I just want to say thank you to everyone who has stuck it out with us, who's here week after week with us. We're bringing you each week a different show. And we thank you. We bless you. And next week, we have Jaja the Bless. She's going to be doing readings right on the show of myself and LD. So this should be interesting for all those that have always wondered how somebody could get through to me. This is the way to come.
And I just want to point out, you also have live shows on Conscious Awakening
Right.
Network.
Right.
So would you
Yes.
promote this?
Yes.
Please?
Yes, as a matter of fact, pretty soon you guys, people can watch you live on Roku and Amazon and Apple TV and on their phone apps, as well as on YouTube and everywhere else. And so, as soon as we get those little fine details ironed out, you guys will have this very show live. So,
Right.
woohoo! Good for
But I'm
you.
asking you specifically about where people can find your show.
Find my show. Okay. Well, you can go to the galacticalliance.org and sign up. You'll get the weekly notices. You can also go to our events section and you can check out all of our past events from last year and this year. And also, you can go to the Conscious Awakening Network and we have Cosmic Conversations. And I was laughing because I'm so busy getting everybody else's stuff on there. It's like, oh gosh, I think I've only submitted 5. I better get busy because I got a ton of them. I just have to do it. I'm always calling, hey, you need to send some more videos in. Hey.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to our audience. Many blessings. We love you. Have a good night. See you next week.
Good night.
Bye. Thank you again.
Thank you.